Hi, everybody, and welcome to COVID Chats. My guest today is Raimie Stein. Raimie was my freshman year roommate at Rutgers University, as well as a fellow brother of AEPi. When he is not talking to me, he is usually working on his music craft. We had a great conversation about how the music industry has been disrupted and how the quarantine actually mirrors some of the creative process of isolated artists. Now, without further ado, here is episode 11 of COVID Chats. Raimie Stein, great to be with you here on COVID Chats, episode 11.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Of course, we were random roommates together at Rutgers University freshman year, and ended up staying in touch throughout. I was always impressed with your creative output in the writing and recording sphere of the music industry.
Thank
Um,
you.
of course. Many questions for you regarding that and regarding that process. But first, I'm curious, seeing as you are now out in Los Angeles for the past sort of 2.5-ish months, I'm wondering what's it like for you living out there during this pandemic and a time where so many friends are back east.
Yeah, so I say in general, it's definitely a little bit, difficult kind of not having my family and my friends around me, people that I grew up with, people that I, consider my closest, people in general. I would say that I knew on some level I was already, sacrificing that stuff when I moved out here. And like you alluded to, I moved out here for the music, for the dream that I'm pursuing, and stuff like that. And it comes with a sacrifice. I definitely think that at a time like this, it can get a little bit more difficult, especially with the isolation, the quarantining, everything like that. And so, there's definitely times where I'm missing people back home and I'm missing my family and my friends back home. I'm missing New York City in general. Um, but, I think something that I'm going to end up saying a lot over this conversation is perspective, right? So, like, why am I out here? Why am I self isolating during this whole pandemic, right? How can I turn the I wish it was this way into I can do things that are productive and that are beneficial? And, I would say to answer your question specifically, because it's gotten tough, um, it's actually helped me to feel like I should be reaching out more to friends, video chatting, FaceTiming with friends, texting, catching up with people that I haven't talked to in a while, and things like that. So I've just been kind of trying to flip it into a positive as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think doing flipping it into a positive is the best way to go about it. I mean, I've been certainly doing a lot of connecting with friends and then also, a lot of yoga, a lot of exercise, learning the piano a little bit, tapping around on the keys.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So,
I
there's a
love
lot of opportunity with all this quote unquote free time.
Absolutely.
Were
Absolutely.
you working any day job that got disrupted? Or are you able to work from home? What's that been like?
Yeah, so I was working a day job. It was pretty basic. It was just management for a chain of hotels while I got my, bearings out here. Unfortunately, I did have that cut off because of the whole pandemic. When they shut down every non-essential business here probably about 2 weeks ago now.
Hmm.
So since that time, I sadly have not been able to, go into work. But again, I've been able to flip it into there's a lot of time for me to be productive with my music stuff, for
Right.
me to make connections, even if it's, over the internet, over social media, stuff like that. It just
Right.
gives me more time to kind of hone in on the craft and the things that I'm working on the other side of things.
Totally. Yeah, it's certainly a great time for that. And I'm curious actually, in light of that, has the quarantine process sort of changed the way you create music at all? I mean, there's a big stereotype of, the isolated artist. And now I think, if I remember time in college, you certainly found time for yourself to be by yourself to work on it anyway. What's it like now that it's kind of enforced? Has that changed it?
Right. And I think that that's a good way of phrasing it because when I was in college, I was quote unquote in isolation a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
Like I kind of, dug out my own space in the house. I was, working on my music sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day beyond classes and the other work that I had to do. And so on one hand, I'm used to it. And then on the other hand, as an artist, it's kind of like you build and you draw off the things that you do in an everyday life to bring it back into the times that you're isolated in order to create, in order to make a song, in order to fire or motivated to do these sort of things. So now that it's kind of a mandated thing, it's not my choice
Right.
100% of the time to be isolated. It is a little bit different.
Mm.
And it is a little bit more, I can't go out and see the sights one day and bring it back to what I'm doing, right? I can't go out to the beach and then be inspired by what I saw that day to come back and write, things like that. But I've, kind of honed in on this. I know what it's like to be here. Like I said at the beginning of that question, like I know what it's like to be in the isolation, in the time to myself, in the, hours on hours of just working on the craft and
Right.
pursuing this stuff. And so, I try not to let it weigh me down too much. I try to kind of draw off past inspirations that I've had, off of even new music that I've been listening to that's come out, even honestly, like these chats that I've been listening to, which like, again, I love that you're doing because it really provides a nice outlet. It really does. It really
Thank
does.
you. No, I'll take it.
Doing it. But all these things, there's so many places that you can draw inspiration from. So when, one thing goes downhill, it doesn't mean that that's everything. It means that
Right.
it's time to find a new perspective, a new outlet, and
Right.
kind of draw from that instead.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very positive outlook, positive perspective. There's tons of past experiences to draw on. You still have your imagination. We have the internet, right? There's plenty of ways to find inspiration, even though we can't, right, go outside and bring that back into our sort of process. There's a lot of famous quotes from various artists about work in isolation. Claude Monet, the French Impressionist painter, said, "My work is always better when I'm alone and follow my own impressions." So, I mean, yeah. So Orwell too, George Orwell. So it was funny. I didn't find many from rappers. Do you think, in part? I mean, I know rap often has a lot of features. It's often collaborative effort, not always, but that is an aspect of it. Has this hurt that in some regard? I mean, you can still share features over the internet and send people stuff, but there's not the in-person studio process.
Of course. So I think particularly I am blessed to be in a situation where even though we're on lockdown and quarantine, I'm still around a lot of creatives who live in my house right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that overall in the industry, from that perspective, it can be tough, right? Because a lot of it is collabing in person. A lot of it is bouncing ideas off of somebody, being in the room with them, being able to go back and forth saying, this makes sense, this doesn't, I think this fits, this doesn't fit. Let's make this part of the song like this. And yeah, you can still do it. Obviously not in person, more over the phone or over FaceTime or chat or whatever it is. So I definitely feel for the artists who are a very collaborative group of people in general, especially in rap music, and aren't able to do that right now. At the same time, for me personally, like I said, I've just been very lucky to still be around creatives. My house is just full of creatives. And so, oftentimes I draw the inspiration or the motivation that I'm getting during this difficult time from those people who are still just like I am, pursuing their craft, who are trying to flip it into a positive perspective. There's a lot of guitar players in my house. There's a lot of recording artists in my house. There's a lot of singers. There's a lot of rappers. There's just a lot of musicians in general. And we've kind of come together to say that it could be difficult. It could be a hard time, but we're not going to let it take away from our resolve to kind of pursue what we're pursuing and continue on the dream. And that's really helpful for me over a lot of different things in terms of being able to flip my perspective, because it was definitely difficult at first, like the first couple of days where you're, mandated quarantine and nobody's used to that, right? When have we seen something like this happen? especially, you know, at our age, if ever really. But just being around these people that I'm around and having them, you know, constantly inspire me and be willing to push me just like I'm willing to push them for the ultimate goal, for the greater good, for our pursuing our passions and things like that has really kept me going for sure.
That's great. I mean, it's so cool that you can have that. You have that kind of community around you. What's the name of this sort of living situation? How many people are you around?
So they call it Upstart.
Hmm.
Um, it's a very cool basically place for any creative. It's not just musicians who live in my house. There's also photographers, videographers, actors, models, like I said, a bunch of different types of musicians, not purely in the same genre or sphere that I am necessarily. And they have about 6 or 7 different locations throughout Los Angeles and different places that they create these houses. And my house, so the size of each house kind of varies depending on where it is. My house is actually around 40 people,
40.
which is a considerable amount. Yeah.
Wow.
It gets quite hectic sometimes for sure, but
Everyone has their
right.
own room?
No, so there's shared rooms. A couple people have their own rooms. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, what you're paying for, you know, the area that you're living in, things like that.
Mm.
Um, but to tell the truth, like I've enjoyed having a shared room because we just push each other. We get along really well. Like we help each other kind of find our creative lens and new lenses, motivation. Everybody's kind of, the camaraderie for sure has just kind of increased and increased and increased since I've been here.
Mm.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Right now, I'd say a bunch of people who generally live here have gone home to be with their families, understandably, during, you know, the whole pandemic.
Sure.
But yeah, the ones that are here, we've honestly, as much as you can have a great time, I've had a great time just kind of bonding, getting to know each other again, just motivationally and inspirationally pushing each other to a new level to find other things that we can, you know, hone our craft with and be inspired by it.
Mm. And you're still able to maintain, proper social distancing within the old 6 feet. I mean, that's hard when there's 40 people in a house. I mean, even if it's a big house.
It's very difficult. It is a big house. There's a lot of space. We try to maintain the proper, you know, social distancing and try not to be, you know, right on top of each other. I think we try not to do that in general because, you know,
Yeah.
eventually that would get on people's nerves. But we've been good about it. People are very understanding here. People understand that, again, what we're going through right now is very out of the norm.
Sure.
But it's not worth fighting about. It's not worth getting, you know, overly worked up about. It's about taking the right precautions. It's about making sure that everybody's safe and everybody's doing what they're supposed to during this time. And, you know, social distancing has definitely been a part of that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I can't imagine living with that many people. I mean, we of course lived in a fraternity house together and there were plenty of boys back then, but I don't know. Thinking about it now makes me going through this. I can't imagine. I mean, I know at Rutgers they were asked to leave and go home, which I think is
Yeah.
probably the right idea because
Yeah.
in terms of mitigating this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. How have you seen COVID-19 affecting the music industry? I mean, of course, concerts aren't happening. I know Childish Gambino today or recently released an album just direct onto the internet, similarly to sort of how I think Beyonce did an album, maybe 5 years ago or so. Do you feel like there'll be more of those just album drops direct, or are people going to wait for concerts to come back? What do you think?
So that's a good question. And honestly, I wouldn't say that I have the, you know, absolute answer. I would say on one hand, we have seen, right, there's not concerts going on right now. Like you just said, there's not live performances like that. On the other hand, it's been a point of almost, you know, like I've been saying, like perspective about how can we turn this into something that's poorly and negatively affecting people into creating a positive message, into turning it around, into flipping people's moods. And, I think music's a great way to do that. So a lot of what's been happening, again, like you said, is a lot more album direct drops that just go online. A lot of albums that were supposed to come out in a couple months that artists have said while they haven't had the time to do the promotion and the backup stuff that they wanted to do, they feel like the people need it right now and they need to hear some positive messages, some music, some good vibes, something to put them in a better mood. So they're willing to drop it right now. I think Sway Lee did something amazing where he, in his own house, performed an entire concert on Instagram Live. And so did he sell tickets for it? Did he make money from it? No. But, did he have people tuned in a positive way? And was he, putting all of his efforts and his heart into the performance, just like he would if he had sold 1,000 tickets? 100%. That's and cool. So a lot of people came off of that, kind of saying, again, at a time like this, there's only so much we can do. Right. But if there's anything we can do, then let's do it, to kind of push the envelope, to create that positive message, to flip the script on all the, sad and negativity that's been going around right now. Right. There are ways to do it. So, I think that it's been a time for artists and the music industry to kind of reflect on how can we still make this impact and create a contribution to society even during a time like this. Right. Yeah, and I would say I don't know if you like Childish Gambino's new album or not.
I haven't heard it yet. Yeah.
I think it's a topic for a different time because I could debate music forever, But
sure, yeah. You listen to it though.
I listen to it, yeah. Cool. But again, like a lot of what he dropped and a lot of what's been being put out by artists has kind of had this positive message and a more upbeat tempo than you generally see, especially in rap and hip hop music. So, I've almost been happy that people have had this time as artists and as participants in the music industry to kind of reflect and then say, how can I flip it and put out this positive message that will help people ultimately in this situation?
Right. Do you think, it seems like the positive message is a response to sort of the current situation. Do you think there will be any more, maybe a further on the nose sort of creation that mirrors what we're going through, like a song particularly called Quarantine or something like that? The reason I say that is because I had my friend Akash on, who's a comedian, and he was talking about how there's comedians who are now going to probably rework their specials a bit so that they can have some material that is about the quarantine. Do you think that will also happen with music? Hard to say.
I think yes and no. I think that while comedians and musicians are both in a creative sphere, they kind of take on different roles, where I've been saying throughout, right, and not in a twisted or messed up way, but if we can't laugh about things, right, what do we have at the end of the day? Sure. And so I understand if a comedian wants to turn, some of their routine into jokes about COVID-19, into the quarantine, into whatever it is, because their goal is not to hurt people by doing it. Their goal is kind of to make people find joy and entertainment in any aspect of life, just to, feel more wholesome and feel better about the situation they went through. I think the problem with that in rap music, especially, maybe more in the industry as a whole, you might see that, but in rap music especially, is that rap is generally not portrayed in the same light as making light of everything for a positive reason and for the benefit of the people who are hearing it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you'll hear some songs, that reference the quarantine, that reference COVID-19. I don't know if it will be as positive of, a response if they just kind of continue to put out regular songs with positive messages behind them.
Right.
Because I think it's more about a certain mindset that you get into when you hear songs. So I don't think it's about relieving a specific tension. I think it's about changing an overall mindset or an overall feeling towards something. Mm-hmm. So I would say you'll hear it, but I wouldn't say it'll be, on everybody's album that comes out in the next couple months or anything like that.
Right. And it might not be as direct. Like it might not be people talking about COVID-19. They might just be putting out good vibes so that
Right.
remember COVID-19, here's some happy music.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about for you? Have you been writing any sort of quarantine related material, or are you trying to put out some more positive stuff now? How has it been impacting your particular specific?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I will say similar to my last response. I have yet to write anything that tackles COVID-19
Mhm.
specifically. Um, and I think again, I've been working on a lot of songs that deal with perspective and deal with taking the bad and turning it into good, or taking the negative and seeing how you can really find it as a positive, and you can flip that script and you can find a different message and underlying idea and concept behind that. I think for me, I've been working on a lot of music that's just generally, or my goal, my hope is that it's generally uplifting music. It's generally something that people can hear and find a different lens, whether they're going through something good or they're going through something bad, right?
Totally.
It'll give them a perspective that they didn't have before. So yeah, I would say not specifically quarantine related, but definitely in the mindset of trying to find positivity regardless of the negative situation that you're in, because there's always something that you can flip. There's always a different way to view things than what you have going on right now. So
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean having that varied perspective is critical, especially in a time like this. On a non-music note, how you doing personally being out in LA? What's it like with I mean, it's relatively warm out there. Are you able to walk outside at all? What's the quarantine?
yeah, of course you see me still in my hoodie because,
Yeah.
I'm just a hoodie guy at the end of the day. But it's actually been really nice the past couple of weeks weather-wise. We had a little bit of a cold spurt, but cold spurt east to west is two different things,
Yeah.
right? Like cold out here is like 60 degrees and like a little bit windy.
Right.
So it hasn't been too bad. And I definitely, a lot of my friends in this house have kind of, on those days where it's 60 and a little bit windy, they're like inside, and if they come outside, they can have like 3 jackets on and things like
Right.
that. And I'll come outside in my sweatshirt and my shorts and my flip flops, and I'll be like, it's a great day.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, I've just taken, short walks around the block, just sat outside. We have a nice patio area in my backyard just to kind of soak up some sun, which has definitely helped, for the positivity and for the perspective. I just realized LA's a beautiful place. So, in a couple months when it's time to pick it all back up and be going outside, it'll be right there for us,
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Venice Beach Boardwalk will return.
Venice Beach Boardwalk will return. I
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. I was there just about a week before they announced the actual shutdown,
Oh no.
uh, and the quarantining, and there were not as many people as usual because it was kind of winding up to that place. But it
Right.
was absolutely beautiful, and it just reminds me again. There's just positive things to look forward to. There's a lot of good things that might not feel like they're coming out of this, but eventually I feel like people will be able to see that there were positives. There were a lot of different opportunities to even appreciate what we have and what we will have in the future just from this
Yeah.
event itself.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, most of us are pretty well off, right? We have enough money for food. We got a stable internet connection. We have a roof over our head. You know,
Everyone watching this, definitely.
everyone, yeah, right. Riding this out from the couch, not so bad. Not the end of the world. Could have been a lot harder.
Could
Um,
be worse. It
could
could
be
be
a lot
worse.
worse. I'm curious. Are you ever a little fearful? I mean, yes, a lot of your friends and roommates have gone back home to their parents, but either when they return or just with the remaining large number of people in the house, is there any concern about the virus spreading there? Do you know anybody who's had it? Speak in terms of that.
So I think we've been lucky in our house that we haven't been affected by it. I don't know anybody either that's gone home or that stayed here that's from this house that has it, or
Mhm.
that has immediate family members that have had it, which is very relieving and nice to hear.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I wouldn't, I try not to panic about these things. I
Yeah.
try to take it as seriously as it needs to be taken, the right precautions, and, like we were talking about before, social distancing, not just leaving the house just to leave the house, being
Right.
very specific and calculated about why you would leave the house if you're going to leave the house, and obviously, keeping your distance, maintaining the right precautions. But I try not to panic. I try not to let it, overtake me with fear. I feel like then you start to get into a place where you don't appreciate the positives that could come from it. You
Right.
don't start to take this time. We didn't really get into this as much, but a lot of this time for me has been a great time to introspect and learn more about myself as a
Yeah.
person, and what I love, what I care about, what I appreciate in this world has really given me the opportunity to take the time and reflect.
Yeah.
I feel like if I took it from a point of panic, if I took it from a point of absolute fear, then I wouldn't really have as much of an opportunity to do that.
Right.
Uh, so again, it's just been about taking the right precautions and making sure that we're all safe, but at the same time, trying to flip the script and find a positive lens on the things that we're going through in a difficult time.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's a beautiful thing that you don't know anybody who's been affected and none of your roommates have. And yeah, as you said, it's a great time to work on the self, introspection, the things you care about. And really no better time than now, honestly.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
okay. Well, Raimie, thank you so much for being on COVID Chats, episode 11 in the books.
Yeah, 11 in the
11 in the
books,
books, and
and
we'll talk soon.
yeah, like I said, thank you again for having me,
Of
and
course.
I appreciate you doing this and keeping the spirits high in a tough time. In a tough
Totally.
time, we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Appreciate you too, bud.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Talk soon.